You know, I said I was going to do a tarpon fly this month, but I just can't face tying any more tarpon flies today. I've already tied about 4 dozen of them, and I just don't want to look at any more of them for a while. We're going to do something a little different. This is a hybrid fly at best. It mimics some of the better patterns, such as a Clouser. It mimics a Deceiver, and it mimics the weedless characteristics of a Bendback. So it's kind of an all-in-all fly. It's tied on an unusual hook. As you can see, it's a worm hook. This particular one is a VMC 7319BN in size 1/0. You can get them up to 5/0. I just wanted the smaller sizes. The purpose of this fly is for using on very shallow grass flats. There isn't really any weight in it to speak of, but we want it to look like a small bait fish, you know, in many respects very similar to a Clouser Minnow, but the advantage being it will be, you know, virtually weed proof and still hook up fish really well. My only complaint about this particular hook, as you can see, it's got a great front end, you know, plenty of room to tie in, but the wire might be a little on the light side. If you get into a really good sized fish, you might straighten it out. But otherwise, it's extremely sharp, and like I said, a joy to tie on because of the amount of front end it has on it, which is unlike most worm hooks. There is a small barb on the front, which I've pinched down in this particular instance so I don't cut my thread on it. It's just all in all a really good hook. We're going to use Flymaster Plus in white, and I'm going to tie in here in the front. And tie right back to that gape, that nice little bend in the hook. Now, in order to give it a little bit of weight, just ever so slight amount of weight, make sure that it rides correctly, I'm going to put a bead chain eye back here in the back in that gape, and we're going to lash that down pretty well. Try to get it to ride square. And you notice I'm putting it on the underside of the hook. This is the way the fly is going to ride. Okay, now that I've got that accomplished, I'm going to cover this upper portion of the hook with some thread. Now I'm going to try to parallel this point to over here on this point on this side. Okay, now that I've got a base thread wrap, I'm going to bring in some pearl body braid, and we're going to tie that in the back. And I'm going to come back forward. Okay, I'm going to bring in my cradle for my rotary, and as long as I'm covering these thread wraps with some of my Dave's Flex Mint, get that good and wet, I'm going to go ahead and glue my eyes, put a little in there as well. Now I'm going to use my rotary and cover the hook shank with this pearl body braid. It's a little awkward. Excuse my hand being in the way, but that back part of the gape is a little difficult without having my hand in the way. Okay, we're up to it. Take my thread off the cradle. I'm going to go ahead and turn this up. Probably be a little easier to handle. Get down in that gap. Put a couple of thread wraps over that. And we're going to trim. Put a few more just for insurance. And I'm going to bring my thread back up to the front. Okay, at this point I'm going to turn my vise over. I'm going to get the cradle completely out of the way, and we're going to grab the hook back and back. The rest of this is all on top. Now, I chose a particularly soft white bucktail that I had that has hair that's, you know, fairly decent size, and I've got a fairly decent sized gob of it. This is a lot more than I would use for a standard Clouser, for example, but we want it, that nice soft hair. Hopefully it'll move out of the way when the fish goes to grab a hold of this thing. And I'm not going to take it much more than half a hook length back beyond the gape of the hook. I don't want it too long. I'm not trying to tie a Clouser. I'm trying to tie something that is fairly small. We'll trim that off, and I'm going to tie that in right in the front here. Get it good and lashed down, so make sure that it's up on top of the hook. Now, you see I didn't tie all the way to the bead chain. I wanted to leave a little bit of room, so I could put a couple of under wraps and kind of flare that hair up slightly. And now it's really important that we stay in front of that rearmost thread wrap so it doesn't flatten it back down. Now in this, again, in this particular instance, I'm using actually some chartreuse Mirage accent, Flashaboo. I'm going to put olive on top. Just folding it across the thread, tie it in, and tie it back again. Don't go too far back. And come back up in the front. Put a little dab of glue on this. Make sure it stays nice and secure. And then really the final step of this is a very, very sparse amount of this nice light olive bucktail. And again, this particular tail is a very soft one. I just want a wisp of color on top, which I'm going to match the length again. Trim that off. Make sure that the hair is right up on top. Okay, that's completed. I'm going to whip finish this real quick. And that's my new hybrid Deceiver. You can see it's fairly easy to tie, nothing fancy. If you wanted to get fancy with this, you might put a very narrow, like dry fly type saddle hackle down the side. Just a nice narrow grizzly, it'd be really beautiful. But it's just a nice sparse little fly for using on the flats. One other opportunity you have is, if you were going to use it in a little deeper water, is perhaps put a little bit of lead wire underneath this body braid. But other than that, it's a pretty easy fly. Have a good night. Thanks.